Have you ever wondered what it is about exaggerated head sizes and facial features that we as humans find so captivating? I mean, this style of caricature is everywhere. It's in video games, cartoons, and toys, but why is it so popular? And what kind of effect does it actually have on us? Well, in 1949, an Austrian zoologist named Konrad Lorenz came up with something called Kindchenschema, or baby schema. It suggests that certain facial and body features activate a sort of caregiver response within us. When we see something cute or juvenile looking, more often than not, our immediate response is to feel some sort of compassion for it. At the very least, it suppresses our fear response and makes whatever we're looking at feel more approachable. People like Walt Disney knew this very well, and there are countless examples of baby schema in Disney's animated films. These movies work so well because their characters feel more approachable and elicit an empathetic response. And exaggerated features like big eyes, for instance, are the reason why subconsciously we just care more about a character who looks like this as opposed to this. Blah. So take Mario, for instance. His features have stayed more or less the same for 35 years, and I think it's safe to say that we wouldn't look at him the same way if they hadn't. Another example is a game called Bonk's Adventure, a 2D platformer released in Japan in 1989. The titular character Bonk uses his head to, well, bonk enemies, meaning this was very much a game design choice as well as an artistic one. So oversized features can be more than just cute, they can be practical and funny too. In fact, one of the most common hidden features in video gaming is called Big Head Mode. When this feature is activated, characters' heads are increased for comedic effect. It was a staple of video gaming in the 1990s, and growing up in this time, Big Head Mode was definitely one of the most used and talked about cheat codes in the games that I was playing. But the game that started this whole trend was NBA Jam in 1993. Jam is the spiritual successor to another arcade title called Arch Rivals, a 2-on-2 basketball game with an emphasis on stylized graphics and exaggerated over-the-top gameplay. In Jam, this was achieved through more photorealistic digitized imagery. It pretty much did for sports games what Mortal Kombat did for the fighting genre. But instead of violent fatalities, NBA Jam has... I mean, it still technically has fatalities. It was made by Midway after all. But this and other features are something that I'll have to cover in a future video. In any case, NBA Jam clearly has a sense of humor, which it inherited from its lead designer, Mark Turmel. At some point during development, a bug had emerged in the game, causing players' heads to swell to a ridiculous size. But instead of just fixing it and moving on, Turmel opted to keep it in the game as a hidden feature. For players of the arcade version who wanted a little more bang for their quarter, Big Head Mode could be unlocked directly after the character selection screen by pushing the joystick up and holding down the steel and turbo buttons. The effect became so popular that some arcade cabinets actually had this mode turned on by default. And this is interesting because this was a back-end setting that the developers had built into the game before sending it out to arcades. Big Head Mode was unique compared to other cheat codes and hidden features. It showed off the work of the designers who had spent countless hours digitizing real faces. It also helped set the tone for a whole new genre of arcade sports titles, like NBA Hang Time, Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey, and NFL Blitz. Keep in mind, all of these games were made by Midway, so it's hard to overstate the company's influence in the 90s. And after the success of NBA Jam, Big Head Mode started to appear in other games as well. Even the more realistic sports simulations were having fun with it, like Sega's groundbreaking 3D soccer game Virtua Striker, which, by the way, was the first of its kind back in 1994. Just a few short years later, the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation were bringing 3D arcade-style experiences directly to the home. As a result, Big Head Mode was appearing less in arcade cabinets and more on the console versions of those games. For example, Tekken 2 appears to be the first notable fighting game to include a Big Head Mode. In the PlayStation 1 version, it's enabled by holding down the select button after choosing your character. This code can also be repeated once more, to even greater effect. Also, you may have noticed that it's not just the player's head that changes. Arms and legs, pretty much every other part of the body will also scale up in size. So this actually makes Tekken 2's Big Head Mode the precursor of a spin-off effect, which made its debut in one of the biggest console games of the 64-bit era. On August 25, 1997, the world was introduced to GoldenEye 007. Developed by Rare exclusively for the N64, GoldenEye was a landmark achievement. It opened up a totally different generation of gamers to the FPS genre, and it successfully transplanted the multiplayer aspect of PC gaming into the console space. GoldenEye also allowed players to unlock cheat codes and hidden features naturally instead of just punching in a series of inputs. For example, completing the third mission of the game in under 5 minutes on Agent difficulty will unlock something called DK mode. This is a reference to one of Rare's previous games, Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo. DK mode, or Donkey Kong mode, gives characters exaggerated heads and arms, just like the first member of the DK crew. But it also expands the hitbox of these body parts, making headshots much easier. It's even available in multiplayer mode, making DK mode a legitimate cheat and not just a visual effect. Thanks to GoldenEye's influence on the industry, for many gamers, Big Head mode was now known more colloquially as DK mode. The following year, another variation of Big Head mode made its way into Rare's next smash hit game, Banjo-Kazooie. This 3D platformer changed up the method of cheat code entry once again. This time by having players solve a series of puzzles and then spell out phrases by ground-pounding lettered tiles inside the sandcastle in Treasure Trove Cove. Spelling Bottles Bonus 1 will increase the size of Banjo's head, and spelling Bottles Bonus 2 will do the same thing to his arms and feet, so it's kinda like a DK mode. But no matter what you called it, Big Head mode or DK mode, this effect kept going strong through the 1990s, appearing in a ton of games. Midway continued to use it in their games like Mortal Kombat 4, Rare added it to their next FPS franchise, Perfect Dark, and Neversoft included it in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, eventually making it a staple feature in game after game. I reached out to Neversoft's co-founder, Mick West, and he gave me a peek behind the curtain to see just how Big Head mode worked for Pro Skater 2. It turns out that the X and Z dimensions are scaled to 3 times the normal size, while the Y dimension is merely doubled, essentially making the character's head a little wider and not quite as tall. The Pro Skater series also added variants of Big Head mode, like Kid mode, which reduces the character's overall size and allows players to land sideways without falling. There's also a Gorilla mode, which is this game's version of DK mode. In 2012, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD took the concept of Big Head mode and actually made it a gameplay mechanic. In this game, there's something of a survival mode, where you have to consistently land tricks to keep your head from ballooning and eventually exploding. Similarly, the 2013 indie fighter Dive Kick has a character whose head increases in size every time he wins a round, making the player more susceptible to headshots. Over time, Big Head mode has made its way into several more games. Since the turn of the millennium, the effect has moved into third-person cover-based shooters, open-world games, and even LEGO games, although that usage is a little more fitting. More recently, it's shown up in franchises like the Batman Arkham series and the rebooted Tomb Raider games. And I gotta say, it's pretty satisfying sneaking around and taking out guys as a giant-headed Lara Croft. Growing up in the 90s, Big Head mode was just one of those ubiquitous parts of gaming that every kid knew about. I mean, for me, it's right up there with Missing No and the Konami code. And the effect itself has stood the test of time, because psychologically, it's just a dead simple way of making the game a little sillier, a little more interesting, and a lot more fun to play. I want to take some time to thank everyone who's been keeping up with the channel so far. It's been a lot of fun making these videos, and I'm really excited to keep pushing myself and getting more content out there. I've already got some plans for the next few videos, but don't let that stop you from commenting and letting me know what you'd like to see. And if you want to kick your feet up and shoot the shit with some like-minded gaming enthusiasts, take a peek at the Discord chat. There's a link in the description and on the channel page. I'd also like to thank the Patreon subscribers who are a big reason why I push myself to make more and higher quality content. If you're interested in supporting the channel, take a gander at the Patreon page. As always, my name's Kyle, and this has been Codex. Thanks for watching.